Did you know that the average person spends almost 5 hours a day on their phone? Or that the typical American home has 300,000 items in it? If you're like most people, you might feel overwhelmed by clutter, busy schedules, and constant distractions. It's no surprise we often feel stressed, exhausted, and disconnected. But what if I told you that simplifying your life could actually make you happier, healthier, and more productive? Yes, by quitting some of the things that are draining your energy, you can create more space for the things that truly matter. In this video, I'll share 6 powerful things I quit to simplify my life and find true peace. From breaking free of the hustle culture to disconnecting from toxic digital spaces, I'll show you how I reclaimed my time, energy, and joy. Stick around to discover how making small changes can lead to big improvements in your mental well-being, relationships, and happiness. It's time to stop doing more and start doing less, but better. Let's dive in. Chapter 1. Goodbye, the hustle myth. The hustle culture is everywhere. We're taught that in order to be successful, we need to constantly be on the grind, more hours, more tasks, more achievements. But what if this isn't true? I decided to quit the hustle myth. The truth is, constantly chasing success leads to burnout. Studies show that overwork is linked to increased stress and health issues, including heart disease and anxiety. By slowing down, I was able to focus on what truly mattered to me. I learned that success isn't about being busy, it's about being intentional. One of the biggest shifts I made was setting clearer boundaries. I started saying no to things that didn't align with my values. It's not selfish, it's necessary for self-care. According to the minimalists, clutter isn't just physical, it's mental, emotional, and time-related. When I removed unnecessary commitments, I created space for the things I love. One strategy that helped was time blocking. Instead of filling my days with random tasks, I created a structured schedule. This gave me more control and less stress. For example, mornings became dedicated to deep work, and afternoons were for rest and personal projects. Research from the American Psychological Association shows that setting boundaries leads to better work-life balance, reducing stress levels significantly. Additionally, embracing the slow productivity concept was a game changer. I stopped trying to do everything at once and started focusing on one task at a time. The result? I felt more accomplished and less overwhelmed. Instead of rushing, I allowed myself time to reflect and enjoy the process. The hustle culture often glorifies being busy, but here's the truth: being constantly busy doesn't mean you're living fully. By slowing down, I became more present and in turn, more productive. The things that matter most should never be at the mercy of the things that matter least, said Goethe. It's about focusing on what truly brings joy and fulfillment. Chapter 2. Bye-bye, cluttered calendar. When I first looked at my calendar, it was full. Meetings, social events, deadlines, there was barely a moment of free time. I realized that I had to quit overscheduling. It's easy to fill your day with activities, but not all of them are necessary. Overloading my schedule only led to exhaustion, not happiness. I adopted a simple rule: if it doesn't bring joy or move me closer to my goals, I say no. This helped me create more space in my life. Research from the University of California shows that busy people tend to feel less satisfied, especially when they don't have enough time for themselves. The key was cutting out the filler and focusing on what really mattered. Time blocking helped here, too. By designating specific times for work, rest, and hobbies, I was able to control my schedule rather than let it control me. It was tough at first, but I started saying no to social events and tasks that didn't align with my goals. This gave me more free time, which I used to relax, read, or go for walks, things that really nourished my mind. I also embraced the idea of slow living. In a world that constantly pushes us to be faster and more efficient, I chose to slow down and savor the moment. This meant spending more time with loved ones, rather than rushing through quick interactions. As the author Carl Honore says, slow living isn't about doing nothing, it's about doing everything more thoughtfully. Additionally, I started scheduling self-care time. At first, this felt selfish, but I quickly learned that taking care of myself made me more present and effective in everything else I did. It's not a luxury, it's essential. By blocking off time for self-care, I stopped feeling like I was always running on empty. Chapter 3. Unfriending toxic digital spaces. We live in a digital world, and social media is everywhere. But for me, it became a source of stress. Constant notifications, comparisons, and noise clouded my peace. So, I decided to quit toxic digital spaces. I unfollowed accounts that didn't bring me joy and started curating my feed with content that inspired and uplifted me. The average person spends around 2 hours and 27 minutes on social media each day. That's over 17 hours a week. Imagine what we could accomplish if we took back just a fraction of that time. According to Cal Newport's book Digital Minimalism, one of the most effective ways to reclaim your time is by being intentional about how you use digital tools. I began by unfollowing accounts that didn't align with my values. Instead, I focused on following those who inspired me, whether they were creators, thinkers, or advocates of slow living. I also turned off unnecessary notifications. By doing this, I reclaimed my attention. Studies show that constant distractions decrease productivity and increase feelings of anxiety. Another strategy was to limit my screen time. I set boundaries around when and where I would use my phone. For example, I stopped checking social media first thing in the morning and right before bed. This small change improved my mental clarity and gave me time to focus on more meaningful tasks. The goal wasn't to disconnect completely, but to create a more mindful relationship with technology. I used my phone as a tool, not as an endless distraction. The result? I felt less overwhelmed and more in control of my time. As Brené Brown wisely said, we cannot selectively numb emotions. When we numb the painful emotions, we also numb the positive emotions. Social media often feeds negativity and comparison, but by quitting certain digital habits, I reclaimed my peace. If you're finding these strategies helpful, make sure to subscribe for more tips on living a simpler, more intentional life. Chapter 4. Breaking up with retail therapy. Retail therapy was once my go-to escape. A bad day? I'd go shopping. Feeling stressed? A new pair of shoes would do the trick. But the more I bought, the emptier I felt. I realized I needed to quit using shopping as a coping mechanism. Studies show that material purchases often bring short-term pleasure but don't provide lasting happiness. The excitement fades, but the clutter and debt remain. The first step was understanding why I was shopping in the first place. I asked myself, do I really need this, or am I just filling a void? More often than not, the answer was the latter. I was using shopping to manage emotions, not to make thoughtful, intentional purchases. The minimalist approach taught me that owning fewer, higher quality items made me appreciate what I had more. One strategy that helped was adopting a one in, one out rule. For every item I bought, I had to get rid of something. This kept my space clutter-free and prevented impulse buys. It also made me more thoughtful about my purchases. According to the minimalists, clutter is not just about physical possessions, it's the result of bad habits. By changing my habits, I started to own less but enjoy more. I also focused on buying only things that aligned with my values. Instead of buying fast fashion, I invested in sustainable clothing that lasted longer. According to a study by the Ellen MacArthur Foundation, the fashion industry is responsible for 10% of global carbon emissions. By choosing quality over quantity, I was doing my part to reduce my environmental impact. Chapter 5. Cutting ties with perfectionism. Perfectionism is something many of us struggle with. I used to feel that if something wasn't perfect, it wasn't worth doing. But this mindset only held me back from taking risks and growing. I realized I needed to quit perfectionism to simplify my life. The truth is, perfectionism is paralyzing. It prevents us from starting projects, finishing them, or enjoying them fully. The first strategy I used was setting realistic expectations. Instead of aiming for perfection, I aimed for progress. As Brené Brown says, perfectionism is not about striving for excellence, it's about fear. I recognized that fear of failure was keeping me stuck. By reframing failure as a learning opportunity, I was able to move forward with less pressure. I also started embracing imperfection in my daily life. The first time I let myself create a messy project, I was surprised at how freeing it felt. It wasn't perfect, but it was done, and that was enough. In fact, research shows that embracing imperfection can lead to greater creativity and innovation. By letting go of rigid standards, I was able to be more flexible and open to new ideas. Chapter 6. Letting go of people-pleasing. For much of my life, I was a people pleaser. I said yes to every request, even when it drained me. I didn't want to let anyone down, and I believed that putting others' needs before mine was the right thing to do. But I soon realized that constantly trying to please others was making me unhappy. So, I decided to quit people-pleasing for good. The first step was learning how to say no. At first, it felt uncomfortable, even selfish. But over time, I realized that saying no wasn't about rejecting people, it was about protecting my time and energy. Research from the Journal of Social and Personal Relationships shows that people who set boundaries are less stressed and more satisfied with their lives. Saying no allowed me to focus on what was truly important to me.